France, a country everyone thinks they know. The Eiffel Tower, fine cuisine, fashion, and beautiful cafes. But behind the postcards lies a nation filled with strange laws, unexpected traditions, and unbelievable history that even many French people don't know. A country where mountains change height, islands swap countries twice a year, and hundreds of cheese types. This is a land shaped by revolutions, kings who ruled for minutes, and inventions. In this video, we're looking into 20 surprising, strange, and mind-bending facts about France you probably haven't heard before. Welcome to Four Corners Facts. Let's begin. Number 20. France is the most visited country in the world. Bonjour! Welcome to France, the undisputed heavyweight champion of global tourism. That's right. Year after year, this incredible nation continues to draw more international visitors than any other country on Earth. And we're not just talking about a little lead, we're talking about a significant margin. In 2024 alone, France welcomed an astonishing 100 million international visitors, securing, yet again, its top spot in global tourism. France's allure isn't just about the numbers, it's about breadth and diversity. Whether you're drawn to haute cuisine and Michelin-starred restaurants in Paris, rustic countryside escapes, or world-class ski resorts in winter, France offers something for every kind of traveler. In short, France isn't just visited, it's experienced. But the tourism boom isn't just cultural, it's economic. In 2024 alone, foreign visitors generated roughly 71 billion euros in tourism revenue, underscoring how essential travel is to France's economy and why the country invests so heavily in hospitality and infrastructure. If tourism were an Olympic event, France would keep winning gold. Number 19. Paris isn't the largest French-speaking city in the world. If you thought Paris was the ultimate capital of the French language, prepare for a delightful surprise. It isn't Paris. It isn't Marseille. It's not even in Europe. It's Kinshasa, the bustling, booming capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, the largest francophone city on the planet sits right beside the Congo River, thousands of kilometers away from the Eiffel Tower, and it completely dwarfs Paris in population. Paris proper has about 2.1 million residents. Greater Kinshasa? Estimates put it at close to 15 million people. So how did this happen? The short answer? Colonial history, demographics, and explosive urban growth. Today, Africa is the beating heart of the Francophone world. More than 50% of the world's French speakers live on the African continent, and by 2050, that could rise to 80%. So next time someone claims Paris is the French capital of the world, gently remind them, when it comes to the sheer number of French speakers, Paris is beautiful, but Kinshasa is colossal. Number 18. France has the most castles in the world. When it comes to castles, fairy tales, and historical grandeur, France doesn't just play in the big leagues, it holds the crown. According to recent compilations, France is estimated to host around 45,000 castles, chateaus, palaces, and fortresses, more than any other country in the world. Why did the French decide to scatter stone fortresses like baguette crumbs across their territory? A few reasons. Decades of feudal rivalries, frequent invasions, hello Vikings, and 100 Years' War, and a strong desire among local lords to show off status and power. Over centuries, these defensive strongholds evolved. Some remained fortified castles with moats and battlements. Others were transformed into palatial residences, filled with sculptures, tapestries, and fancy gardens. With 45,000 potential stops, exploring France's castles is less a weekend trip and more a lifelong quest. That said, if you're planning a trip, just picking 3 or 4 highlights, a fairy tale palace, a medieval fortress, maybe one hidden gem off the tourist path, already makes you part of the castle chaser elite. Number 17. France has the world's largest fashion industry. France isn't just a country, It's a runway with borders. And whether you're strolling down the Champs-Élysées or queuing for a baguette in a tiny village boulangerie, one thing becomes clear very quickly. The French don't just wear clothes, they curate themselves. And this national obsession with style has helped France build the largest fashion industry on Earth, a global empire stitched together with luxury, tradition, and an almost supernatural ability to look effortlessly chic. How big is big? Well, France's fashion and luxury sector is a juggernaut worth hundreds of billions of euros, driven by titans like LVMH, Chanel, Hermès, Kering, Dior, and a constellation of boutique designers who somehow make even potato sacks look runway ready. Just to put it into perspective, LVMH alone is valued higher than the GDP of several small countries. Paris has been the world's fashion capital since the 17th century, when Louis XIV decided that looking fabulous was a matter of state. And of course, the tradition continues today with Paris Fashion Week, arguably the most influential style event on the planet. Number 16. You can marry a dead person in France. Yes, you heard that correctly. In France, you can legally marry someone who is no longer alive. It sounds like a movie plot twist, but it's actually written into French law. The story begins with a heartbreaking event. In 1959, a dam burst in southern France, killing hundreds, including the fiancé of a young woman named Irène Jodard. She pleaded directly to President Charles de Gaulle, asking to still be allowed to marry her deceased partner. Her case touched the nation, and de Gaulle approved it. Soon after, the rule was officially written into the civil code, because apparently in France, not even death should stand in the way of true love, or administrative formalities. But let's clarify, this is not something done casually. The French state requires a serious, proven, and documented intention to marry before the person passed away. The deceased must have expressed clear commitment, engagement, written plans, or even family testimony. And of course, you must still ask the President of France for permission. Meanwhile, on the marriage certificate, the words mariage posthume are added, just so future historians or family genealogists can raise an eyebrow in confusion. Number 15. The island that changes country every 6 months. Welcome to Pheasant Island, the world's most peaceful geopolitical glitch, perched quietly on the Bidasoa River between France and Spain. It's so tiny you could walk across it faster than it takes to explain what co-sovereignty actually means, and trust me, that takes a while. Every 6 months, ownership switches. From February 1st to July 31st, the island is proudly Spanish. From August 1st to January 31st, it becomes staunchly French, basically the world's most civil joint custody agreement. The arrangement dates back to the Treaty of the Pyrenees in 1659, where the two nations ended a long war and said, fine, you get it half the year, we get it the other half, and nobody fights about this ever again. A diplomatic masterpiece considering the island is uninhabited, has no buildings, no shops, no residents, and not even a single pheasant left, despite its name. In a world full of territorial disputes, Pheasant Island stands out as a gentle reminder. Sometimes the best solution is simply to share, even if it means passing a tiny island back and forth for over 360 years with impeccable punctuality. Number 14. The French eat 4,000 tons of frog legs every year. If you ever feel judged for ordering extra chicken wings, just remember, in France, people are devouring thousands of tons of frog legs every year, and nobody bats an eyelid. To the rest of the world, frogs are something you avoid stepping on after the rain. In France, they're dinner. Studies on European imports show that France and other EU countries together import over 4,000 to 5,000 tons of frog legs annually, with France consistently one of the top consumers. Most of these frogs don't actually come from French ponds, though. They're imported from countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, and Turkey, where frogs probably tell horror stories to their tadpoles about the French market. What do they taste like? The classic answer, like chicken, but more delicate. The legs are usually breaded, fried, or cooked with garlic, parsley, and butter, because in France, even amphibians get gourmet treatment. Of course, the idea of eating frogs is a favorite cliché about the French. Most French people don't eat frog legs regularly. It's more of an occasional treat, a regional specialty, or something you try once to feel culturally adventurous and then brag about forever. Number 13. France invented modern restaurants. If you enjoy sitting down, choosing from a menu, you can thank France. The country didn't just perfect fine dining, it invented the modern restaurant as we know it. Before the French stepped in, eating out was a chaotic experience. Travelers were served whatever the innkeeper felt like cooking that day. There were no menus, no individual tables, and definitely no complaining. If you didn't like it, tough luck. Then came Paris in the 1760s, where a man named Maître Rosé de Chantissois began serving delicate, individually portioned dishes he called restaurants, a word meaning restoratives. These were broths meant to restore the body, but Parisians quickly realized he was onto something bigger. Personalized food choices, elegant decor, and fixed prices. Revolutionary. Things truly exploded after the French Revolution. Suddenly, aristocratic chefs found themselves unemployed, so they opened public eating houses. Their culinary expertise and flair transformed dining into an experience. Menus, table service, and multiple courses. Paris quickly became the global reference point for gastronomy. The restaurant culture spread across Europe and eventually the world. Next time you sit down in a restaurant, you're participating in a delicious French invention. Bon appétit!
Number 12. France is the birthplace of cinema. It all began in 1895 when the Lumiere brothers, Auguste and Louis, presented one of the world's first public film screenings in Paris. Their invention, the cinematograph, didn't just film motion, it projected it to an audience. People paid 1 franc, sat in a small basement room, and watched everyday scenes come alive. One of the legendary moments was a short clip of a train arriving at a station. The story goes that some viewers panicked and ducked, thinking the train would burst out of the screen. But the Lumieres weren't alone. Enter Georges Méliès, a magician turned filmmaker who created cinematic special effects before CGI was even a twinkle in anyone's imagination. With films like A Trip to the Moon, complete with the famous image of a rocket landing in the moon's eye, Méliès showed that cinema wasn't just about capturing life. It could create entirely new worlds. From these beginnings, France built a rich cinematic culture. Cannes Film Festival, avant-garde directors, and films that make you feel cultured just by watching the trailer. So yes, France didn't just love cinema, it invented it, and ever since, the world has been watching.
Number 11. The Eiffel Tower was supposed to be temporary. It's hard to imagine Paris without the Eiffel Tower, but the Eiffel Tower was never meant to be permanent. In fact, Parisians originally wanted it taken down, ideally yesterday. When Gustave Eiffel proposed his 300-meter Iron Giant for the 1889 World's Fair, critics lost their minds. Famous artists and writers published angry letters calling it a metal asparagus, a tragic street lamp, and even a monstrous black smokestack. The plan was simple: build it for the fair, show it off, then tear it down after 20 years. Eiffel agreed, probably thinking, fine, they'll miss it when it's gone. Spoiler, they did. What saved the tower wasn't beauty, it was science. Eiffel cleverly installed weather instruments, wind monitors, and later a radio antenna on top. By the time the demolition deadline arrived, the tower had proved too useful to destroy. Fast forward to today, and the temporary tower is one of the most visited monuments on Earth, adored by millions and apologized for by none. Parisians eventually accepted it, as one does with an odd relative who becomes unexpectedly famous. Number 10. France is the most nuclear-dependent country on Earth. Around 70% of the country's electricity comes from nuclear energy, with about 57 reactors operating across the country and a total installed nuclear capacity of about 63 gigawatts. France possesses the largest nuclear share in any national electricity mix worldwide. France's heavy nuclear commitment dates back to the 1973 oil crisis. In response, the country embarked on a massive nuclear build surge under the so-called Mesmer Plan, effectively phasing out dependence on oil and gas. Yet this nuclear dependency brings geopolitical fragility. Much of the uranium that fuels France's reactors historically came from West Africa, notably Niger, which supplied roughly 15 to 20% of France's uranium needs. But in the aftermath of the 2023 military coup in Niger, that arrangement began to unravel dramatically. In June 2025, Niger's government moved to nationalize one of the uranium mines operated by the French state-owned nuclear firm Orano, a bold act of reclaiming sovereignty and rejecting what many Nigerians see as exploitative legacy deals. Leaders in Niger have accused France of exploiting its resources, taking uranium at little cost and pumping energy for French homes, all while leaving Niger in darkness, deprived of meaningful economic benefits, environmental justice, or stable infrastructure.
Number 9. France helped the United States win its independence. France played a crucial and often underrated role in helping the United States win its independence. When the American colonies declared their break from Britain in 1776, they were brave but badly outmatched. France, still smarting from its defeat in the 7 Years' War, saw an opportunity. Supporting the Americans wasn't just an act of friendship, but a chance to weaken a powerful rival. At first, France helped quietly, sending supplies, weapons, and gunpowder through secret channels. But everything changed after the American victory at Saratoga in 1777. Convinced that the rebels had a real chance, King Louis XVI openly allied with the new United States. French soldiers, sailors, and huge sums of money poured into the war effort. The partnership reached its dramatic peak in 1781, when the French Navy under Admiral de Grasse trapped British forces at Yorktown. Washington's army, strengthened by French troops led by the Marquis de Lafayette and General Rochambeau, closed in on land. The British surrender there effectively ended the war. Without France, American independence would have been far harder and possibly impossible to achieve.
Number 8. The highest mountain in Europe belongs to France. Most people imagine Europe's highest peak somewhere in the Alps of Switzerland or deep inside Italy. But the true giant of Western Europe stands proudly on the French side of the border. Mont Blanc, rising to an astonishing 4,807 meters, that's nearly 5 times the height of the Eiffel Tower, stacked on top of itself. Unlike solid rock peaks, Mont Blanc is wrapped in thousands of years of compacted snow and glacier ice, and that enormous frozen shell grows and shrinks every single year. Its height can shift by up to 2 meters depending on snowfall, winds, and temperature changes. Scientists climb it regularly not to enjoy the view, but simply to remeasure it. And there's another twist. The summit has sparked a quiet, ongoing debate between France and Italy. Although Mont Blanc straddles their border, both countries once claimed the very top as their own. Maps, treaties, and even military documents have disagreed for centuries over where the boundary actually lies.
Number 7. The average French person eats about 26 kilograms of cheese per year. If you've ever wondered how France manages to stay culturally united despite endless debates about politics, strikes, and whether baguettes should be crispy or soft, the answer might just be cheese. The average French person devours about 26 kilograms of cheese every single year. That's roughly the weight of a medium-sized dog or a small suitcase packed entirely with camembert. And this isn't supermarket cheddar we're talking about. France boasts over 1,000 types of cheese, meaning a French person could theoretically eat a different cheese every day for almost 3 years and never repeat a single slice. Unless they wanted to, in which case they probably would. Because in France, cheese isn't just food. It's a lifestyle, a national treasure, and sometimes even an argument waiting to happen. In fact, General Charles de Gaulle once famously complained, "How can you govern a country with 246 kinds of cheese?" Today, that number has quadrupled, which explains a lot. So yes, 26 kilograms a year might sound excessive, but in France, that's just being patriotic.
Number 6. France is the birthplace of modern aviation. Long before the roar of jet engines shook the skies, France was already busy teaching humanity how to leave the ground. If you trace modern aviation back to its roots, you don't end up in Kitty Hawk or some high-tech NASA lab. You end up in 18th century France, surrounded by curious crowds, drifting smoke, and two brothers who looked at a fire and thought, what if we flew that? In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers, Joseph and Etienne, papermakers by trade, launched the world's first successful manned hot air balloon flight. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and France wasn't done innovating. The world's first female pilot license? French. The world's first commercial airline? Also French. La Compagnie Générale Transaérienne in 1909. Louis Blériot became the first person to fly across the English Channel in 1909, beating gravity, bad weather, and Britain's disbelief all in one spectacular leap. And let's not forget the nation's most iconic aviation masterpiece, the Concorde. Co-developed with the UK, but largely engineered by French brilliance. It was the first and still only regularly operating supersonic passenger jet. Paris to New York in just over 3 hours, fast enough to eat breakfast in France and complain about American coffee before noon.
Number 5. France consumes an estimated 16,000 tons of snails annually. Only in France could a tiny, slow-moving garden dweller become a national treasure and a multi-ton culinary obsession. Every year, the French gobble up an astonishing 16,000 tons of snails, which means millions upon millions of little escargots sizzling in garlic, butter, and parsley. To put that into perspective, if you lined up that many snails end to end, they'd stretch well beyond the length of France, probably trying to make a very slow escape. But don't imagine French people sprinting into their gardens with baskets, collecting every snail in sight. No, France eats far more snails than it can produce. In fact, up to 90% of the escargots eaten in France are imported, mostly from Eastern Europe. Every December, right before Christmas, the snail frenzy reaches its peak. Escargots are a holiday classic, and about 2/3 of all snails consumed in France are eaten during the festive season alone. And despite being, well, snails, they're not cheap. A dozen good quality Burgundy escargots can cost more than a nice steak, but the French don't mind.
Number 4. France created the metric system. Imagine a world where a pound meant something different in every town, where one region measured land by the size of an ox's walk, and where a foot literally depended on whose foot you were using. Welcome to pre-revolutionary Europe, a measurement madhouse. And then came France, ready to bring order to the chaos. During the French Revolution, the leaders of the new republic decided that if they were going to reshape society, they might as well fix the maddening world of measurements too. So in 1799, they introduced something radical, a system based on logic, universality, and the laws of nature. Thus, the metric system was born. Instead of kings' thumbs, farmers' guesses, or medieval traditions, the metric system used decimals and scientific constants. A meter was defined originally as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole. A kilogram was tied to the mass of a liter of water. It was clean, elegant, and most importantly, consistent. France essentially said, let's stop arguing and just use math. Today, the metric system is used by almost every country on Earth, except for a few stubborn outliers like the United States, Liberia, and Myanmar. Number 3. France has the world's most visited museum, and it's not even close. If France were a movie star, the Louvre would be its blockbuster franchise. This museum isn't just popular, it's a global phenomenon. With over 9 million visitors a year, the Louvre is the undisputed heavyweight champion of museums, crushing every competitor by millions. And yes, a single painting, you know exactly which one, plays a big role in this cultural stampede. People fly across oceans, stand in queues longer than a Parisian lunch break, all for a glimpse of the Mona Lisa's half-smirk, a smile so mysterious it has become a meme, a mystery, and a marketing tool all in one. But here's the twist. The Louvre isn't just about her. It holds over 35,000 works on display and nearly 500,000 pieces in total, from ancient Egyptian sarcophagi to Renaissance masterpieces and even Napoleon's old apartments. For many visitors, stepping into the Louvre feels less like entering a museum and more like stepping into a living timeline of human civilization. It's grand, overwhelming, and unforgettable. No wonder the Louvre doesn't just lead the list of the world's most visited museums, it leaves everyone else in the dust.
Number 2. The croissant is not originally from France. The world-famous crescent pastry actually traces its roots back to Austria, where its ancestor, the Kipfer, had been enjoyed for centuries. The story gets even juicier. Legend says Viennese bakers created the crescent shape to celebrate victory over the Ottoman Empire, mimicking the shape of the Ottoman crescent. Yes, your morning pastry might secretly be historical propaganda. So how did it become French? In the late 1700s, an Austrian officer named Auguste Zong opened a Viennese bakery in Paris. Parisians fell in love with his flaky, crescent-shaped pastries, and French bakers soon adapted the recipe. They swapped dense dough for delicate laminated layers of butter, and voila, the modern croissant was born. What makes this even funnier is how fiercely French the croissant feels today. The baguette has competition, the macaron has rivals, but the croissant? Untouchable. It's become so iconic that most people assume it has been French forever. But just like many great stars, it had a foreign origin story before achieving fame in Paris. Bon appétit, or should we say, Guten Morgen.
Number 1. French was not always the national language of France. It's easy to assume that French has always flowed through the cafes, courts, and classrooms of France, but that's far from the truth. For most of its history, France was a patchwork of languages, dialects, and regional identities. In fact, until the late 18th century, more than half the population didn't speak French at all. Instead, people spoke Breton in the northwest, Occitan in the south, Alsatian in the east, Basque in the southwest, and dozens of local dialects in between. French only became the official national language after the Revolution, when leaders decided that one unified language was essential for creating a unified nation. Before that, French was mostly the language of elites, nobles, clergy, scholars, and the royal court. If you were a farmer in rural France, chances are you wouldn't have understood a single royal decree. Things changed dramatically with the introduction of national schooling in the 19th century.
Teachers were instructed to promote French and discourage regional tongues, sometimes harshly. The result? French spread rapidly, eventually becoming the dominant language we associate with the country today. So, yes, the language of love had to fight hard to become the language of France. France is full of surprises. We've only scratched the surface. If you enjoyed this journey, let me know which country you want next. Thanks for watching Four Corners Facts, where the world's most fascinating stories are never more than a click away.